Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and learn how to animate a character in Adobe Animate to add to your complex side-scrolling animation. Now, I've already gone ahead and I've built my character in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm in Illustrator right now, as you can see. And if you look over my layers panel, you're going to see that I really made a point to make different components of the character in different layers. So I can turn off my layers. So I've got a snowboard layer. I've got a scarf flap layer because I'm going to move that. I've got a body layer and I've got a head layer. And that means all four of those things, I can then move them so they don't all move as one chunk, but instead can move separately later. So then what I need to do is go ahead and choose one layer at a time, one component that I want to have move. I'm going to go up to File, Export, Export As, and then you've learned how to do this. I'm going to export it. So I'm going to export it as head. I'm going to put it in. I made a folder on my desktop called Snowboarder. So I'm going to put it in that folder. I would recommend you put it on your desktop into maybe a little subfolder if you want or not. And I'm just going to hit export. I'm not going to replace it because that'd be crazy. But if I already did this, but go ahead and just make sure you have a transparent background and 72 pixels per inch is just fine. So I'm going to do that for the head, and then I'm going to do it for the body, and then I'm going to do it for the scarf, and then I'm going to do it for the snowboarder. So that I end up having in a folder 4 separate files: a PNG of the body, PNG of the head, PNG of the scarf, PNG of the snowboard. So I've got all of those components now exported as separate PNGs. So I'm good to go. So then I can minimize Illustrator and I can open up Adobe Animate. Now I'm going to open my side-scrolling animation already, and you can see a couple things about this. Let me pull this up a little bit so you can see a little bit better. When I'm in my side-scrolling animation, one, here's my stage, so pay attention to that rectangle. You can always turn visibility off by clicking on the eyeball off. So I can see my stage, and then I can turn my sky on. I can turn my hills on, which is my middle ground, and my foreground, which I have this separate tree a couple times. I can zoom in or out with Command minus or Command plus. I'm going to zoom in a bit. So there I am in Command plus. So what I'm going to do now, I've got my 3 layers. I've locked them all so I can't mess with them. I'm actually going to go ahead now and I'm going to create a new layer with the little plus icon, new layer icon. And now in frame 1, which is empty keyframe, I'm going to bring in my different PNGs. So I can start over here with the body, just drag it in. I can put it where I want to put it. Seems like a good place. I can scale it how I want to scale it. Let's do it like that so my character's nice and big. And I can hit return. Oh, I don't want to actually hit return because that plays my video. Oops. So I'm going to click on frame 1. And there's a keyframe there. So then I'm going to go, like I did before, to frame 240. I'm going to insert a new keyframe. I can hit this little icon, the insert keyframe icon, or I can right-click, insert keyframe. Oops, I just did that twice for some reason. I'm good. Why did that not do what I wanted it to do? So I'm there. Insert keyframe. Cool. And yes, I like that. So my character, it's there the whole time. So no matter what I play, my character is just chilling in the middle of my screen. Cool, awesome. So I'm going to call that body. Great. And now I'm going to go in. I'm going to lock it down so I don't mess with it. I'm going to create a new layer. Same thing. Frame 1. I go in. I drag in the next component that I need. My little character's head, which I now need to scale up. So I'm in the transform tool, which is the second tool option. And I hold down shift so it scales up appropriately. I can fit it where I need to fit it. That looks great. And I'm good. Okay, so there's a head there. Let's name it head. And I'm just going to keep doing this now. Lock that down for all my layers in frame 1. I'm going to bring in what I need to bring in, place it and scale it as needed, holding my shift key to transform. That looks great. I'll call this scarf. And then we do that one last time for the snowboard itself. Frame 1, bring in my snowboard PNG, scale it up, place it where I need to place it. Cool. Now, and I'll call that board. And also keep in mind, I can also manipulate my timeline so it's a little bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing. So whenever I'm in frame 1 now, I have all kinds of things going on in my animation. Where'd my snowboarder go? Oh, Command 0. How about I find that? Okay. Now I need to reorder a little bit. So I want the scarf layer. I can drag that down behind the head and the body, and the snowboard behind everything too. So now head is on top, board is on bottom. So my order is correct. Now I can go ahead and I can start manipulating things. So I've got a couple options with how I want to do that. With my snowboard, let's say, actually, let's start with the scarf. So I've got my scarf. It starts up here. So I'll unlock my layer, and this is a good position for my scarf. But maybe what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to manipulate where my scarf is flapping in the wind. So I might go in and, this is great for frame 1. So then I go to frame 2, and I'm going to create a new keyframe on my scarf layer. Now, I'm going to do a couple things. Let me turn my head off for a minute. So let's zoom in a bit. Here is my scarf. Now, I can rotate it if I want to for this keyframe. The issue is going to be it's going to rotate based on this axis. So I can actually click and drag that down here so it kind of rotates off that point. Then I can rotate my scarf just a little bit. So I might rotate it up a little bit. Go to frame 2, insert a new keyframe. Frame 3, rotate it up a little bit more. 4, I might then make it come down a little bit more. 5, keyframe, down a little bit more. And I can just kind of choose, sort of keyframe, down a little bit more, how much flapping I want there to be. Which is pretty cool. Now, the reason you're seeing previous, I'm going to just turn off my onion skinning. It was showing me my previous frames. So I'm here. And if I click on my different keyframes, you can see how my scarf is now going to be moving frame to frame to frame. So I want to go ahead, insert a new keyframe, have it come down a little bit more. And now I'm going to have it go back up. Insert a keyframe, bring it up, insert a keyframe, bring it up, insert a keyframe, and bring it up. And basically what I'm doing is making it so that it starts in one spot and gets almost back to that spot. So I need to bring this up a little bit more because I want it to kind of get back to it. So if I scrub through, I grab my scrubber, you can see now that it's like flapping in the background a little bit. Not elegantly, so I can always manipulate that later. Then, I don't want to have to do that for 240 frames. That'd be crazy. So what I can do is I can shift click on my first one. I can click on my first one, hold down shift, and click on my last one. I can right click and I can copy frames. And then I can go right here on my next frame and I can paste frames. So that way that now it looks like it's kind of flapping in order. So I can do that. Then I can go here and I can Command D. I'm just kidding. Undo that. What was I thinking? Shift, click on my last. I can copy those frames. I can right click, paste those frames. Then I can start it over. I go in my first frame, I shift click to my last frame, I copy those frames, I paste those frames. Now there are other ways to do this. It's not the most elegant, but knowing what we know right now, it's a good starter way to do this in Adobe Animate. And then we'll get a little bit smarter with it. Now, I want to go ahead and I'm going to do this one more time, shift click. So I'm copying these frames, I'm pasting these frames. Now what you're going to notice is now this goes way too far. So I can now click on every frame after 240, can select all those keyframes. I can clear those keyframes so they're gone. And then I can click from there, shift click to frame 545. And I can just right click and remove those frames. So now there's no extra frames. So it's just gonna keep doing that forever. So if I hit enter, now my little scarf is flapping in the background. Not too shabby. Okay, so that's good for my scarf. I'm gonna lock that down. For my head, which I'm gonna turn back on now, I want my head to end up back where it needs to end up. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna insert a keyframe on frame 240 on my head layer. Oops, let me unlock that. No wonder it's mad. And then I'm gonna go in and I'm going to create something called a motion tween. And I'm gonna hit okay. A motion tween is a little bit different. So before we've had a classic tween, a motion tween is kind of cool. So I can say by frame 10, I want this head to rotate a little bit this way. And then by frame 50-ish, I want it rotating more this way. And then when I get over here, I want it to have rotated back, and I might want it to come down a little bit. And then maybe over here, it comes up a little bit. And then maybe over here, my head comes over a little bit. So I'm just moving around where my head is. I can change its position slightly, and I can affect the rotation slightly. And I'm just choosing different points along my way. And you might say, well, what's the point of this, Mr. McKay? I want to make sure everything's always showing. And by the end, I want to get back to here. Let's say that. Okay, so now I go here, and what it's going to do, it's going to automatically fill my different points in. So if I hit enter, it's now going to rotate my little head around, and it's going to be kind of bobbing around, and everything looks good. Now, I did notice a point where earlier, there's a gap there. Where'd that start? That started about here. So in between this point and this point, I got a problem. So I'm going to move that over a little bit so it doesn't get that. Sorry, let me do it right there. So it doesn't get that gap. And now it's being really funky. Move over there, head. All right, so it's a little angry. I can always go into and I can clear that keyframe. I can change my position. So then now it's going from there to there. And if I still want to add a point in there, I can move it. And I can tweak it. But now that gap is gone. So now I'm going to go back in, hit enter, and I can see my little head is just kind of rotating around, bobbing around. My guy's having a grand old time. Now, I could have done something similar like that with my scarf. So you can decide which way you like better, inserting lots of different keyframes and manually positioning each thing that way, or by using a motion tween. And you can do either one. So if I zoom out, I'll go out a little bit more, that can be really, really, really helpful. I'll do the same thing for my snowboard. I'll move that around. But now if I go in and I go to control and I test my movie and animate, it's going to show me now that I've got this little character that's kind of snowboarding around, flapping. I might put some movement on the body. I might put some movement on the snowboard. And definitely I need to change my layer order because my foreground needs to be in front of my character. So now if I go to control, test movie, and animate, those trees are zoom in past my character. So that's how I bring my character into my complex animation. And that is how I manipulate the different components of my character just to give it more life and more interest. All right, thanks so much. Have fun.